Hi friends, happy spooky season! I was trying to get some Bailey Sarian vibes there, hence the tattoo sleeves. And I got a new cute t-shirt. Anyway, some of you may not know, I am from England, the northeast of England to be precise. So no, I'm not Welsh, or Australian, or Irish, though we do share some cultural traits with Ireland. I'm sure you have heard plenty of ghost stories from the United Kingdom, the most common being the Brown Lady of Rainham Hall in Norfolk, Sir Francis Drake haunting Buckland Abbey in Devon, and not to mention pretty much anyone who was executed at the Tower of London. Having said that, that's why I want to tell you some spooky stories from the northeast of England, including my hometown, Newcastle upon Tyne. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and get ready to hear some spooky stories for spooky season. First, we're going to start with the town of Alnwick, which is about 35 miles away from my hometown if you take the A1. Hardcore Potterheads may recognise the name because of good old Alnwick Castle, where the first two Harry Potter films were made. No, it's not in Scotland. In Harrogate, which is not far from Alnwick Castle, there is an old pub which is said to date back to the 1600s. Its name back then was the Old Cross Pub, most likely because of an actual cross that hung on the wall, rumoured to be a cross from the former Norman lords of Alnwick, and as the truth's known, it was probably looted from the castle at some point. The Old Cross pub actually closed down in the early 2000s, but later reopened in 2014 and renamed the Dirty Bottles. But there is a very good reason for that, and here's where we get into the good part. In 1725, the old innkeeper of the then Old Cross pub dropped dead not long after moving a stack of 4 bottles. Seriously. Just plop, dead, not alive anymore. Some sources say he died of a heart attack, but this was the 1700s and autopsies weren't really a thing back then. I suppose he could have complained about his left arm hurting, but Not long after his death, his wife proclaimed that anyone else who touched the very same bottles would suffer the same fate. A little sus, her. From then on, almost 300 years later, they have never been touched since. The pub is still up and running today, and one of its most famous features is in its windows. Ancient and filthy bottles. Our next story features a theatre that I have been to many, many times before with my dad. A tiny theatre opera house which was opened in 1867 before being converted into a cinema in 1919 and then back into a theatre in 1974 is said to be haunted even after all those renovations. On the 8th of April 1887, a thunder run, an early sound effects invention that involved wooden balls rolling down a chute to imitate the sound of thunder, was used to set the scene for the opera Nodessa, which came into production of the same year. However, unfortunately for Robert Crowther, a 30-year-old carpenter, up to his mates, a 37-pound cannonball was used instead of a wooden one. Big mistake. As expected, it rolled off its track and hit poor Bob, who was standing below. Wrong place, wrong time. He was killed instantly. After his death, a fund was set up for his widow Mary and their 4 children, which raised 10 guineas. In today's money, 1 guinea, according to my research, was about £1.05. Times that by 10... Just remember, back then it was a lot of money. Once the Newcastle Chronicle, the city's newspaper, had raised awareness of the cause, it increased to over £75, about 7 or 8 grand in today's money. But considering the average pay was 3 or 4 shillings, around 30 pence, meh. Back to Bob. His ghost has been spotted either at the side of the theatre or in the front row seat, watching visitors and future productions. Visitors and staff have said they have felt being touched and pushed in these areas, or have felt a cold breath brush their face. Apparently, Bob also has said to have a favourite seat in the theatre, where he has also been spotted. It is also said that people have become uncomfortable in this chair for no reason whatsoever. No one said what seat this is, but I just hope that I haven't sat in it. This one is just kind of sad. I mean, they're all sad, but with this one, you'll find out why. This resident ghost of the theatre was a young actress called Bessie Featherstone. Bessie was an aspiring thespian who regularly performed in pantomimes, usually as the role of a principal boy, a historic theatre tradition where the male protagonist is played by a young female actress. Without knowing, poor Bessie had contracted typhoid fever, a bacterial infection commonly contracted through contaminated food and drink that can spread throughout the body and infect the organs. Bad. Sadly, right in the middle of a performance of Aladdin, on New Year's Day in 1907, she collapsed on stage and died in the theatre at just 31 years old. She died doing what she loved. According to witnesses, a young woman's voice can be heard singing in the theatre, especially in the dark. There wasn't very much known about Bessie Featherstone, but in the description I actually found a link about her personal history, so if you'd like to see it, it's in the description below. Turns out, Hogwarts isn't the only school that has ghosts like the Grey Lady haunting the place. Durham University, which was founded in 1832, have had the pleasure of sharing multiple buildings with a couple of ghosts. The most common ghost sighted in Durham Castle, which is part of the University College, is the Grey Lady who haunts the Black Staircase. Around the 17th century, Isabella Van Mildert, who was the wife of a Durham bishop, William Van Mildert, fell down the stairs and broke her neck. Some say she threw herself from the top of the stairs, some say she just tripped. Regardless, she is the ghost with the most sightings as she haunts the castle. Students, lecturers and visitors have reported catching glimpses of her roaming the halls and gliding up the staircase. Talk about irony. Apparently, whenever she appears, there will always be a strong smell of lavender that lingers around the halls and staircase. I mean, lavender is a nice scent, and personally, if I were a ghost, I'd make the smell of strawberries linger when I appear. Also, fun fact, Durham Cathedral, a place I've been to before many times, which is also part of Durham University, was also used to film many scenes from the Harry Potter movies. Before I end the video, I want to add a few special mentions, one to a place I go to every time I go to the hairdressers. Also, this is one of Mama Gamer's favourite places of all time. The Newcastle Castle Keep. That joke never gets old, does it? I just want to briefly mention it, emphasis on briefly, because this castle has been around for centuries and a lot has gone on during that time. And I mean a lot. To say it's haunted is pretty much an understatement. I mean, let's face it, it'd be easy to list of who doesn't haunt the place. People have reported hearing chanting monks, seeing a lady in the Queen's chambers, and the most famous ghost, the Poppy Girl, whose story is very tragic. If you would like to learn more about the castle keep and its hauntings, or even take a trip to visit it and have a look about the place, I'll leave a link in the description below. And finally, Newcastle upon Tyne has its very own Hogwarts Library, the Literary and Philosophical Society of Newcastle, or the Littenville for short. This place that I love to call my second home was founded in 1793, but its library wasn't opened until 1825 on Westgate Road in Newcastle. It also isn't too far from the aforementioned Castle Keep. Seriously, it's like a 3-minute walk between the two. Just like the Castle Keep, a lot has happened, so much so that the library itself even hosts events around ghost hunting and telling ghost stories. Again, they will all be linked in the description below. One thing I really want to talk about is the Great Fire. Not the Great Fire of London in 1666. 1666. In February of 1893, when the society turned 100 years old, a fire broke out. It's not very clear on what started the fire, but thankfully the fire was put out by the fire brigade. But sadly, a lot of books were destroyed or ruined in the process. And almost 130 years later, you can actually still smell the smoke and charred remains from the library. I have been all over this library and I think I do sometimes smell the remains of the fire, and it is a little spooky when you think about it. I'm just sad about all those books that have been lost. Anyway, that's all I have to tell about these spooky stories. The best part about them, in my opinion, is that you can actually visit all of them that I have mentioned. And as I've said, all the website about these places will be in the description below. And if you like the video, hit the like button before you go and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And with that, see you soon.